Have you ever wondered why someone who seemed so perfect suddenly became distant the moment things got real? The truth about how avoidant love was destroyed lies hidden beneath layers of protective mechanisms that most people never recognize. This pattern destroys more relationships than infidelity, more dreams than broken promises, and more hearts than outright rejection. Yet it operates in shadows, disguised as independence, strength, or simply being too busy. What makes this particularly fascinating is how the avoidant person genuinely believes they are protecting both themselves and their partner. They construct elaborate emotional fortresses, complete with moats of busyness and walls of self-sufficiency. The cruel irony: these very defenses become the instruments of destruction for the love they secretly crave. Understanding this psychological dance reveals something profound about human nature itself: our extraordinary ability to sabotage the very thing we desire most. The stakes here are higher than most realize. When avoidant attachment patterns take hold, they don't just affect one relationship. They create ripple effects that touch every future connection, every moment of vulnerability, every chance at genuine intimacy. The person trapped in this pattern often experiences what psychologists call the phantom X phenomenon, always comparing current partners to an idealized version of someone who got away, someone who remained safely at a distance. But here lies the most intriguing part of this story. The destruction of avoidant love isn't always permanent. There are specific moments, particular circumstances, and precise interventions that can break through these patterns. The key lies in understanding not just what happens, but why it happens, and more importantly, recognizing the cognitive biases that keep these destructive cycles spinning. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Picture a successful marketing executive. Let's call her Sarah. She had everything figured out, or so it seemed. Career climbing steadily upward, social life perfectly curated, independence worn like a badge of honor. Then she met David at a conference in Chicago. He was different, patient, consistent, genuinely interested in her thoughts rather than just her achievements. For 3 months, their connection deepened. Video calls that lasted until dawn, weekend trips to small towns where they explored antique shops and shared childhood stories. But something shifted the night David said those 3 words. Not the obvious ones. He had whispered, "I love you," while they watched the sunrise from his apartment balcony. Sarah felt her chest tighten, not with joy, but with something that felt dangerously close to panic. The very thing she had been unconsciously hoping for had arrived, and suddenly every instinct screamed, "Run." What happened next reveals the devastating precision of avoidant destruction. Sarah began finding flaws. David's laugh became too loud. His texts arrived too frequently. His genuine interest in her day transformed from endearing to suffocating. Like Serena van der Woodsen from Gossip Girl, who repeatedly sabotaged meaningful relationships when they threatened her carefully constructed independence, Sarah began the slow, methodical process of creating distance. The cruelest part? David never saw it coming. One day they were planning a trip to Spain, discussing whether to rent a car or take trains between cities. The next week, Sarah was working late every night, responding to his messages hours later with increasingly brief replies. When he finally asked what had changed, Sarah delivered the killing blow with surgical precision. She needed space to focus on her career. David, confused but respectful, stepped back. Within days, Sarah felt simultaneously relieved and devastated, proving that the destruction of avoidant love wounds both people equally. Now, if this pattern sounds familiar, there's something crucial to understand about breaking free from these destructive cycles. The first step involves recognizing what psychologists call the confirmation bias trap. When someone with avoidant attachment feels threatened by intimacy, their brain becomes a detective, searching for evidence that confirms their deepest fear, that getting close leads to pain. Every small disagreement becomes proof that the relationship won't work. Every moment their partner seems needy becomes evidence that independence is being stolen. This bias works like a filter, letting in information that supports the need to withdraw while blocking out evidence of genuine care and compatibility. Remember Joe Goldberg from Netflix's You? While his attachment style skewed anxious rather than avoidant, he demonstrated how powerfully confirmation bias shapes relationship reality. He interpreted every action through the lens of his existing beliefs about love and danger. Avoidant individuals do something similar, but in reverse, they gather evidence for why love won't last rather than why it might. Breaking this pattern requires what researchers call cognitive flexibility training. This means deliberately looking for evidence that contradicts the avoidant narrative. When the urge to create distance arises, the crucial question becomes, what am I not seeing right now? Often, the answer reveals itself in small moments. A partner's patience during a difficult day, their respect for boundaries when asked, they're to maintain their own interests while still prioritizing the relationship. The second critical element involves understanding the sunk cost fallacy in reverse. Most people think of sunk cost as staying in situations too long because they've already invested so much. But avoidant individuals often experience reverse sunk cost anxiety. They become terrified of investing more emotional energy because the potential loss feels catastrophic. The solution isn't to invest less, but to reframe what investment actually means. True emotional investment isn't about losing independence or risking everything on one person. It's about expanding capacity for connection while maintaining individual identity. Think of Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris. While her romantic patterns had their own complications, she demonstrated something valuable: the ability to form deep connections while maintaining her career ambitions and personal growth. The key lies in understanding that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the birthplace of intimacy. The third piece involves mastering what psychologists call secure base behavior. This means learning to view a romantic partner not as a threat to independence, but as a foundation from which to explore the world more fully. Secure base behavior requires practice in small doses. Start with sharing minor concerns instead of handling everything alone. Allow a partner to provide comfort during stress rather than automatically isolating. Notice how these small acts of interdependence actually enhance rather than diminish personal strength. Here's where the transformation becomes possible and why understanding these patterns matters so deeply. The destruction of avoidant love isn't inevitable. It's a learned response that can be unlearned. The same intelligence that creates elaborate emotional defense systems can be redirected toward building sustainable intimacy. This doesn't happen overnight, but it happens through consistent small choices that challenge old assumptions about what love requires and what independence means. The most successful individuals in overcoming avoidant patterns share one crucial insight. They learned to distinguish between healthy independence and defensive isolation. Healthy independence means maintaining personal goals, friendships, and interests while building something meaningful with another person. Defensive isolation means using these same activities as walls to prevent genuine connection. Remember that Sarah from our story? 6 months after pushing David away, she realized something profound. The space she thought she needed had become a prison. Her career success felt hollow without someone who truly knew her to celebrate with. The independence she had protected so fiercely had transformed into loneliness disguised as strength. The beautiful truth about human attachment is its capacity for healing and growth. Those same neural pathways that learn to associate love with danger can be rewired to recognize love as safety. But this transformation requires courage. The courage to stay present when every instinct says to run, the courage to communicate needs instead of creating distance, and the courage to believe that genuine love expands rather than diminishes who someone is meant to become. The choice stands before anyone caught in these patterns. Continue the familiar dance of approach and retreat, or risk something far more terrifying and infinitely more rewarding, staying present for love's full arrival.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.